Well, happy January 12th. 9/22, January 12th, as America prepares to water the tree of liberty with the blood of America's most gullible. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be real ugly. Um, unless they manage to root a lot of stuff out between now and the weekend. They're not looking for anywhere near enough people, and they're looking for all the idiots. Nobody of any tactical importance. Um, so I think I'm just gonna do some minor, minor, minor messing around. And try to avoid major disappointments. I don't expect to have any difficult. I'm having trouble finding an affordable place, but I don't expect to have any difficulty moving out of here into some place. Maybe not anything with long-term lease, but I'll have something. I'm not going into the street. Skull. Just fresh water tonight. There's just you run out more than maybe 16 or 32 bars on a saxophone, and it's like, okay, I've had enough of that. I'm just not one of those kind of players that can keep going and going and going and like just no. I mean, I could, but it's like eventually it's like no, I got to stop that and do something else. Give it a break. Let it reverberate in people's heads a little bit. The music is in the silence between the sound. It's been said over and over and over again by many, 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 many artists over the ages. Mozart wrote it to his father.
223, the nays are 205. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
I'm not sure what's going on. I think first they pass it, and now there's a motion to reconsider. They're just wasting a lot of fucking time because Pence has already said he's not going to do anything. Here, I should read that.
Pursuant to Section 5A1B of House Resolution 8, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay, they're adjourned. Yay. Anyway, back I'm just waiting for Addie Claret to make a comment about me never playing in a minor key. Is that? That's what the fuck that is. Okay, well, you're welcome. You didn't have to give me that nasty signal. Goodbye. Close that. I should read some of this shit. Yeah, music and politics tonight. I can't, for some reason, I can't get a decent audio stream going out. I mean, somebody's jamming. I don't know what the fuck is happening. I have to probably quit while I'm ahead. I'm a little dry tonight, and I need to get some water before I read anything. Alrighty. Uh, 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 uh. That's certainly been a wild week. Um, we literally have finally gotten Americans riled up. Somebody got Americans riled up enough, and he deliberately did it over the past 4 years. It's been his whole, his whole operation. It's been just to get people to get riled up, fear conditioning people, and to get all riled up to where it finally will rise up in insurrection. The FBI is warning that there are uh, call outs for armed presence in all the state capitals and DC, probably starting as early as Martin Luther King's birthday on the 15th. It was either the 16th or 17th or both. The Million Militia March, and then the Inauguration Day event. And seriously, America's about to water the tree of liberty with America's most gullible, manipulating America's gullible assholes. To the best of my knowledge, the left, as always, it always well. About let's talk about Antifa real quick. I'm third generation Antifa. Okay, um, my grandparents and his brothers, my grandfathers and his brothers went over there to fight that, and we were raised on film of it all, and I've studied it. You know, um, I'm a nonfiction writer, and I've studied history, and I've lived history, and we're in the middle of it right now, and I'm real happy and grateful to have made the choices that I made and met the people that I met in my life path, um, and feel um, secure in the knowledge that I can die without shame and be proud of my failures in this, you know, as a colonized piece of chattel. I just never could play that game. I'm sorry. And I've been blessed with the presence and manifestations of people in my life who've taught me a terrific amount and helped me along the way every step of the way. From the time I got kicked out into the world by my family and by it wasn't the corporate reality. I just couldn't handle. I couldn't come to terms with the Navy, which is what I wanted to do, and I went into medicine instead, and I just medical research, and I couldn't handle the animal torture, and I tried to get out into it on the West Coast, found the doors locked, and I couldn't make it in the aquarium industry. So I got something, but for a little while, but it didn't work out, and I ended up in the street with a saxophone and a car, and the rest is like Tommy Tudor's hipstery. Um, I'm amazed I'm here today, as healthy as I am, with the kind of following that I have. Um, I'm real grateful for the peer. You know, we move. We have this little bubble, and we have like in our hierarchies of behavior and stuff, we have like people that we feel responsible to laterally and vertically, and and below, you know, above, below, and to our sides. That there's different responsibilities that we give ourselves in the way we interact with various people in our lives. Um, and I'm just real pleased with, you know, the way things have worked for me. And in spite of my weirdness, I mean, I can hardly stand myself, but in small doses. I have to go and like disconnect and go back to wherever it is my spirit goes when it's at home. Because it sure ain't at home here. I mean, it's, you know, it's doing the best it can to steer this body. But it's a fucked up world, kids. This is a real fucked up world. You know, the obviously the space Jews were not, you know, giving me accurate time and date data. Okay, but I am an astral traveler. I am an empath. I receive telepathic impressions, and that's just the way it is. And I'm not schizophrenic. Okay, I you know I proved that one repeatedly. I'm real eccentric, and I have a wide range of expression. You know, I can go from like, you know, laughing and having a good time to like incredibly like raging and just have a Tom moment. But this is me. I'm not a man or a woman. I consider myself much more feminine than masculine, and I appreciate people um, accepting me for what I am, and you know, respecting my wishes and how they relate to me. Um, you know, I feel sorry for the idiots that hate on me like the way they do. You know, and they're gonna, you know, they're gonna look at this and they're gonna find some reason to ridicule me and talk about how ass blasted or something I am. It's like, man, if you guys really believe that shit, you need some fucking psychiatric help. You know, I mean, really, I am not at all like what. I mean, I'm kind of like I play the fool a lot. Um, because I trust too much, and it's a real common problem with my peers. Is that we're going to take everything at face value. We're programmed to love all, hate none, in peace, love, unity, and respect, and we don't set our boundaries as firmly as deceitful people do. So we end up getting screwed easily. I call it a cheap trick. Um, Not much to say except stay the fuck away from it. These people are not operating on true facts. They've been deceived badly. They've been incited to insurrection, and a lot of people need to be held accountable for this insurrection. I mean, I haven't even had time to read most of this stuff. I should probably go back through my page and just like go back to this morning. I don't think I've hardly had any chance to do anything but breeze. Just quickly scan stuff. I don't think I've read anything like really carefully today. There's so much. Might as well start here. That's just in the last hour. Might as well. So I might as well work backwards. Here we have a Capitol police officer who works the night shift said he and others expected to work on the day of the attack, but were sent home. This is from the Business Insider. Hopefully they don't hit me with a fucking paywall. Here it comes. No, they're not. They thought they were going to pull an extra shift Wednesday, but they were sent home instead. Understaffed force was overwhelmed when Trump, blah, blah, blah. Officers spoke on a condition of named Tom Brass for leaving the force understaffed and unprepared to deal with the mob. Lack of manpower caused the entire freaking disaster. We just didn't have the numbers. And the Capitol Police are not responding for comment. I don't need to read all of that. Let's see what else is Bobby excited about. Ah.
FBI after last week's attack on the Capitol. We'll bring you that to you
There's
live
the
when it
FBI
begins.
announcement.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives is preparing for an unprecedented.
Yeah, they're being chased down for felonies. They're going to be charged with sedition. They didn't charge Angeli with anything but misdemeanor bullshit, though. But they can always enhance things. And good old Arizona. Here's the map. Yay, Arizona. Arizona wins. This is Arizona's #1 on this for the most different kinds of venomous animals. We have over 30. I shared that before. Always in the news. Our North once sold surface-to-surface missiles to Iran, to the Islamist Iranian government illegally, and now he's complaining about their use. I swear we live in a comic book world. This is just no. There's no sense to any. It's like tragic comedy. Just one thing on top of another. Just you have to like. Am I supposed to laugh or cry or get angry? Yeah. The question is asking man when you put the toilet seat down for her, but ask yourself when has she left it up for you? Know your worth. And I laughed at that because that's one of the kinds of things that people like me have like this real special insight into being able to see both sides of the issue. I was going to go to my page and just start reading. Okay, we'll just read some headlines for you. Off-duty cops from across the country identified as participants in Capitol insurrection. Mary Trump in The Guardian is saying, my uncle is unstable. He needs to be removed immediately. AOC tweeted, I have one message to members of Congress who amplified lies to undermine our democracy, encouraged an attack on our Capitol, and tried to overturn our election. Resign. If your lust for power exceeds your dedication to democracy, there is simply no place for you in Congress. And I reported, here's something from Fred. Grateful Fred. Few thoughts on this fear that Trump is going to implement martial law. Trump and his followers, including some rogue police and military, do not have the power to implement martial law. They do have the power to cause a lot of trouble when the shit flies. I mean, we saw that Wednesday because there were a lot of them in the crowd. There were Congress people in that crowd. The West Virginia state rep has been arrested. His grandmother was even thanking Trump for all the wonderful work that Trump did as they were hauling her grandson away. And Jelly's mother was hilarious coming out of the courtroom talking about how her kid can't eat unless it's organic shaman food. And they won the order. But then 4,238 people or something like that died yesterday from COVID, the hoax. I have friends that are not seriously ill, but dealing with it, and a couple of long-termers. And everybody else hurting economically and emotionally from the lockdowns. You know, I'm in the music and arts industry. We're fucking hurting bad, real bad. So Fred goes on. He says to implement martial law, the president needs the support and allegiance of the military, National Guard, and police forces, not a few rogues. The highest levels, yeah, but the rogues can really cause some problems when the shit flies. The highest levels of the military would need to issue the orders, and the chain of command down to the rank and file would need to follow those orders. Does anybody really think that this is possible in this country at this time? Trump is pretty much totally isolated from and condemned by the highest commanders of the military, past and present. This is true. The Joint Chiefs made a statement today about how they would be upholding the Constitution over any order coming out of the White House. As an example, when he tried to mobilize the military to repress the BLM mobilizations, the military refused. Many police and National Guard took a knee in solidarity. This country is pretty fucked up right now, and there's plenty more turmoil and conflict in the future. You bet the Tree of Liberty is about to get watered a lot if they are not able to just squelch this whole call up for armed insurrection from right now. FBI's, we'll get to that. The martial law will not happen at this time except in a Trump wet dream. This is true. What I said back to Fred was H.R. 38 just passed, and the call is out for Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, which Pence will not do. Deutsche Bank announced this morning that they were calling in his notes, as in Trump's notes, and Bibi, as in Benjamin Netanyahu, took the picture of them together off of his Twitter profile cover picture. Responding to fears that he still had the nuclear codes, Colin Powell said that there was no way that any launch order made a tantrum was going to be obeyed. That lame duck is just about cooked. And then Red Seattle is an old rainbow brother from Seattle with red hair. It was a writer and, you know, one of them hippie philosopher types. And politically active, and he's saying, I feel jealous of writers that say what my intuit thoughts have been mixing. In other words, he feels that he's been thinking about it, but he hasn't put it in words, and he's jealous that somebody beat him to it. Me, I just read the shit, and yeah, I don't, you know, I write my own, and then read stuff that I should have been able to write myself and comment on it as I read it. So that's me. I don't get all jealous over it. The white backlash has begun again. As surely as, let's see how long this is. Not very. It's pretty short, actually. comment. I won't read the comments. There's 200. There's more comments than there is meat to the story. Um, the white backlash has begun again. As surely as night follows day, any flex of political power by black and brown people in the United States will be followed by a reactionary white supremacist show of force. The pattern of racist white backlash, the barest hint of racial progress, has persisted since the earliest days of the Republic up until now. From antebellum white mobs attacking free black people, essentially just for existing, to the Civil War itself, and post Reconstruction violence punishing black self determination in Tulsa, to the violent and many other places. I mean, like, uh, what was the place, South Carolina? I forget, Charlottesville, maybe. I forget. There was one that was nearly as bad as Tulsa, and there were a whole mess of them that were pretty bad in their own in between that moment and the moment of the violent resistance to the civil rights movement. And then the enraged panic genesis of the Tea Party and Trump era immediately after the election of the first black president. Against that historical backdrop, the white insurrectionist takeover of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th was as predictable as a pendulum swing. After all, the purpose of Congress session was to ratify the results of the 2020 election, where the political power and organizing genius of black and indigenous people of color not only issued an unmistakable electoral rebuke of white supremacy's latest avatar in Donald Trump, but also delivered the first black and South Asian woman in history to the office of the vice president. The day also came directly on the heels of the Georgia Senate seat runoffs, where the power of black voters, largely organized by black women leaders, elected the state's first black and Jewish senators, wresting control of a southern state and the Senate itself from Republicans' grip in the process. They now have a trifecta. Now, the question is, before I proceed with this trifecta, who are they going to be listening to? And I'll leave it right there. Is it going to be listening to their constituency who got them the votes, or are they going to listen to their corporate sponsors who are like doing things that we don't want them to do? So anyway, going on. Notably, both the outcomes in the general election and the runoff came despite concerted efforts to suppress black and brown voting power. For those committed to the conception of America as a white ethno-state, then those victories represent a special danger because they highlight both the reality that solidly red states have only been such because of voter suppression, and the fact that such suppression can be out-organized, out-strategized, out-voted, and overcome by grassroots organizing. Anyone who believed the white supremacists Trump and the Republican Party have been coddling and cultivating would peaceably accept any of that has not been paying attention. However, today, news stories and tomorrow's history books may try to whitewash the motivations animating this insurrection, credulously accepting the mob and their sympathizers' appeal to disproven voter fraud and election irregularities. This was not about anything other than white people lashing out and trying to regain control of a nation they believe is theirs and theirs alone. The symbols of the day, which the insurrectionists self-consciously branded as they illegally forced their way into the center of the federal government, speak for themselves. A noose hanging from a wooden beam on Capitol grounds, the Confederate battle flag hoisted in the Capitol building, a white man covered in tattoos of white supremacist symbols standing smugly on the balcony of the Senate chamber, and boy, I could go on and on and on. They pissed on the Capitol steps. They smeared feces on the walls of the rotunda. They stole all sorts of art and artifacts, just totally trashed the place, and killed the cop. And then there was Officer Goodman, a black cop, deked out the whole fucking crowd away from the access to the Senate chamber up into a phalanx of Capitol cops. Guy deserves a medal of honor for that one, or whatever the top award they give the cops, he should get it. So what now? Historically, too often, the U.S. government response to violent white backlash has been reconciliation and retreat. Don't punish the Confederate rebels too much and abandon Reconstruction. Keep welcoming segregationists into polite society and public life, and avoid spooking them by shunning as leftists any public outcry, any public policy that would benefit black and brown people. That absence of consequences continues into the present day. Just last year, an armed right-wing mob entered the Michigan State House and was similarly met with little resistance and virtually no repercussions afterward. It's hard to imagine the mob who stormed the Capitol didn't witness the Michigan episode and absorb the unmistakable lesson of white impunity. At the Capitol, they saw their impunity confirmed as police stood aside while the insurrectionists broke into a federal building and arrested virtually no one afterward. Stark contrast to the way black demonstrators have been treated in recent months, and there was a demonstration of people in wheelchairs that they arrested more people that day than they arrested last Wednesday. Beyond that, it remains to be seen whether Congress will take any coordinated steps to hold the culpable leaders, Trump, Senator Josh Hawley, Senator Ted Cruz, and other Republicans, accountable and strip them of power so they can't continue to endanger people. Dressed up as a noble desire to move forward and forgive, these constant failures to hold lawless white supremacists accountable only leave black and indigenous people of color unprotected and send the message that, and why do you do that? What's wrong with just black and indigenous? It's like, or how about just non-white? Nobody ever, that's BIPOC. Fuck a bunch of acronyms. Unprotected, and send a message that perpetually escalating attacks on multiracial democracy have no consequences. While white supremacist backlash to growing black and brown political power may not be wholly preventable, the way the nation chooses to respond to that backlash can neutralize its ability to harm black and indigenous people as we continue to rightfully and forcefully assert our full personhood in this country. Those in power have a responsibility to act with that aim in mind, which is pretty much what I've been saying, like, straight along here, and lots of other people are saying that if we do not hold everybody accountable and punish them severely for their actions, and if the treason of the high elected officials is sufficient to merit capital punishment, I won't object to it, because that's how serious it would be for us to just, okay, let's move on, unify behind the machine again. We'll just do it nicer this time, and the black folk and the indigenous folk, we'll let them get a bigger piece of the pie. We can't let that happen. These people must be held accountable. And as if we don't, we will be accepting insurrection as an acceptable means of conflict resolution into the American body of law. And we can't do that. It would be the end of the republic. So my comment to that was, anybody wailing about how this isn't what America is about is simply conditioned to not understand this is what America has always been about. It's a white supremacist plutocratic oligarchy populated by the children of the dregs of European society, oppressing all the non-white people. Not much will change from this unless there is not accountability for all the players in this very wide-reaching seditious conspiracy. In that case, sedition and mob action will have finally become legitimized in the American rule of law. We don't need to read that. We don't need to talk about that either. 2 more transgender people were shot to death, one in Chicago. I haven't had a chance to read this, so I probably should read this. 1 in Chicago and 1 in Puerto Rico. One looks like a trans man, the other looks like a trans woman. The deaths of Tiana Davaria Alexander and Samuel Edmund Damian Valentine come after a year that saw record violence against transgender. Okay, so the transgender man was in Puerto Rico, transgender woman was in Chicago. They were both shot to death. First reported deaths of 2021. Tiana Davaria Alexander, 28, was shot to death on the street in the Gresham neighborhood on Chicago's South Side at about 5 a.m. Wednesday, the Chicago Sun-Times reports. She was shot in the head and was pronounced dead at the scene. A man accompanying her, Brandon Gowdy, 31, was hit in the arm and was taken to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead. The shots were fired from a vehicle. Homicide detectives are investigating the crime. Alexander is being remembered. Ms. Alexander is being remembered fondly. Beverly Ross, a trans advocate and community sister who grew up with Tiana, said that she was a loving person who everybody loved to be around, noted a press release from the National Black Justice Coalition. She loved to dance, had a great sense of humor, enjoyed life when she could, and just wanted to be able to vibe and thrive. She was the second black trans woman killed in Chicago in recent weeks. Courtney Eshe Key, 25, was shot to death on Christmas Eve in what friends and family believe was an anti-trans hate crime. Beverly was planning homegoing services for two of her friends, members of her community, in last week alone. The National Black Justice Coalition Executive Director David John said in a press release, "The year has just begun, and already the anger and pain that our community has recently experienced as a result of white supremacy has been compounded by the transphobia that too often undergirds the violent ways members of our community are stolen from us. Tiana should be here, Courtney too. My only hope is that our community commits to ensuring that Black Lives Matter, including Black trans lives, soon." He called on the incoming U.S. President and Vice President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to address violence against trans Americans, which they've pledged to do, and to support trans kids, which Betsy DeVos tried to trash on the way out the door. In Puerto Rico, Samuel Edmund Damian Valentine was found dead on a highway in Trujillo Alto early Saturday, Primera Hora reports. A driver had hit what she thought was an object on the road, then stopped and realized she had hit a dead person. Valentine had been shot several times in various parts of his body. He was misgendered in initial reports, something that was called out by activist Pedro Julio Serrano of Puerto Rico Para Todos. One of the most serious problems we have with police and Department of Justice is they do not identify LGBTIQ plus queer people in their incident reports. He said in a press release, according to Primera Hora, almost every time a queer person is murdered, I swear I'm sick and tired of that fucking alphabet soup, especially when they start messing with it. It's the community itself that identifies them. The police and justice fail to comply with their protocols, and it even seems that they want to ignore, make visible, and minimize the serious problem of the wave of homophobic and transphobic violence that haunts us like never before. This has to stop, and the government has to act immediately to tackle this crisis. At least 12 queer people have died by violence in the territory in the past 2 years. Serrano urged police to investigate the possibility that Valentine's death was a hate crime. Police said they are looking at all possible motives. The deaths of Alexander and Valentine come after a year that saw record fatal violence against trans and gender nonconforming people in the U.S. 44 were reported to have died violently in 2020. The most, since activists and media have been keeping records, and the majority of the victims were Black or Latin women. And what's with the Latinx anyway? And that is likely an undercount, as many are misgendered by police or media, or their deaths are not reported at all. Moving right along. Canadian Proud Boys are in a panic as their platforms go offline and government talks of terror listing. Racial bias in U.S. policing is a national security threat. That was from the SPLC. Congratulations to Sarah McBride, who was sworn in today as the state senator as a state senator in Delaware. Um, AJ Weberman has just been posting one-liners. AJ is one of the surviving Yippie journalists. He's the guy that used to. He still dogs Bob Dylan. He's the guy that just dumpster diving Bob Dylan, drove Bob Dylan mad, and Dylan tried to sue him all the way to Supreme Court and lost. Now, AJ announced something. Dr. Peter Dale Scott invented the term deep state. And I went and grabbed the wiki on the real truth of it. I don't know who this Peter Scott is. Maybe he was somebody who was involved in this. But the term was originally coined to refer to a relatively invisible state apparatus in Turkey, composed of high-level elements within the intelligence services, military, security, judiciary, and organized crime, and similar alleged networks in other countries, including Egypt, Ukraine, Spain, Colombia, Italy, Israel, and many others. According to the journalist Robert Worth, the expression deep state had originated in Turkey in the 1990s, where the military colluded with drug traffickers and hitmen to wage a dirty war against Kurdish insurgents. The term deep state is likely a translation from the Turkish derin devlet, which literally means deep state or deep polity. In 2014, Bill Moyers, the former press secretary, the Johnson administration, hosted a discussion on his PBS television show with a long-term congressional staff member examining the concept of deep state hiding in plain sight that promotes military conflicts regardless of which party is in charge of the executive and legislative branches. Now, we had observed that clearly during the 80s, where they were like, I knew a guy that they used to like send to Afghanistan. They sent him into Afghanistan through Pakistan, packing in missiles and packing out dope. Yeah, and we used to deliver the hash for him all over America, on a mansion in Chicago. Clear air, it's like, they're definitely there. We knew about that. It was obvious. You talk to any Vietnam era veterans, and they'll tell you about the CIA guys that were like connected to their units and shit, and telling them who to kill and where. That's what Pete Buttigieg was doing in Afghanistan. Was driving people around, showing them targets. I got a treasure award. I got special recognition for a photo. Yippee. Rick Snyder, the former governor of Michigan's getting charged in the Flint water scandal. We don't need to read that. Donald Trump made America great again and ran the deficit up in 2017 from $585 billion to $3.3 trillion at the end of 2020. House Democrat calls to exclude 126 Republicans from next Congress for supporting Texas lawsuit. Ginger's really been on edge. My friend Ginger and I. She's like 74 years old. She grew up in the Jim Crow South in a righteous Christian house, where she was taught that no, your skin color has nothing to do with what kind of person you are. And just because you're white, that doesn't make you better than any black people. And so she's lived with this all her life, and now it's going nuts again, right in her face. This is crazy. Democrats and news is going crazy. I've not said anything until now, but fuck you haven't, Ginger. Freedom of speech, guys. I think the election was messed with. I think Trump is a crybaby, and I'm tired of it. How do you not know that it was not the Democrats waving Trump flags? Oh, I know, press does not lie. Why is the FBI saying there will be more trouble in every state capital? Some people just stirring the pot. The people that were in the march should be made to pay for what they did. They could have walked away at any time. You may not like your government or what you're doing, but you need to respect it. Stop the hate, people. And I was like, no, there's this active seditious conspiracy with plans for armed insurrection in all the state capitals until Biden is sworn in. Every American needs to be focused on their own personal safety. Seditious speech and actions are not protected speech. We're well beyond differences of opinion at this point. Everybody needs to be held accountable, or we are accepting insurrection as an acceptable form of conflict resolution under American law. And Yeah, she's I do not agree with them. Just so much hate, and I agree with you. The hate does hurt, and that's compounded by all the stupid from all the partisans on both sides demonizing each other instead of doing like Fred is saying, is listen to each other and find the common ground. We're Americans. We're not supposed to hate each other just because we don't see eye to eye on political issues. That's not what America's supposed to be about. And here's another thing from NPR: the lies we tell ourselves about race. Here's the comment that was shared with it. I don't have time to listen to this. It's the same shit. We've all been talking about it for months, actually. This is exactly what I scream at the TV every time some idiot says this isn't America. Yes, it is. America was founded on racism and slavery. You can't fix a problem that you refuse to acknowledge. It's just that simple. These people need to be shamed and imprisoned. The GOP must be crushed. And then here's something from a local somebody's local affiliate station with a piece on these 9 days. Police in D.C. arrested more people than they did during the Capitol siege. There's a lot of them. I know they arrested more people. Let's see what they are. I know there was that one like last year or the year before with the disabled people in wheelchairs. They arrested a whole shit ton of them, and they arrested like over 100 at least once with Jane Fonda's thing, the Fire Drill Fridays. So 133 LGBTQ activists on October 8th, 2019 were there right across First Street from the Capitol. This was when they were certifying the case that they heard the Bostock versus Clayton County. And 33 people got arrested then. 147 climate change protesters, Jane Fonda's Fire Drill Fridays. 147 on January 10th. 181 Obamacare supporters. I think that was the one with the people in the wheelchairs. Yeah, that was the one with the people in the wheelchairs. That was September 25th, 2017. 217 Trump inauguration protesters got picked up on January 20, 2017. 302 Brett Kavanaugh opponents on October 4th, 2018. 316 Black Lives Matter protesters June 1st, 2020. 372 Keystone Pipeline protesters March 2nd, 2014. 400 plus Democracy Spring activists on April 11th, 2016. 507. Whoa, doggy. Oh, that was the big one. That was the big one. 575 immigration policy protesters on June 28th, 2018. The big one was 12,000 of them, opponents of the Vietnam War on May 1st, 1971. This isn't officially included in the list. It isn't a fair comparison given that half the century has passed and the country looks markedly different than it did in 1971. But the May Day protests against the Vietnam War have been described as the largest mass arrest and largest mass acquittal of demonstrators in U.S. history. 5,000 police, backed by 1,400 National Guardsmen, greeted the 35,000 protesters descended on Washington that day, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. Anyone and everyone who looked at all freaky was scooped up off the street, one protester said, according to the ACLU article. Federal court later agreed, saying the innocent as well as the guilty were in large numbers swept from the street and placed in detention facilities. An ACLU victory resulted in acquittals from almost all the protesters, allowing them to collect monetary damages for their mistreatment, the civil rights group said. That's not going to happen this time. We were having trouble getting people out of jail for the protests, the pipeline protests and stuff. The veteran, there was a guy, Lieutenant Colonel. I hope this is the guy. His ex-wife turned him in. You know, as Mark safe from live streaming myself, committing a felony in the Capitol. Oh, and this was, here's a plot twist. the dead cop, Brian Sicknick, was a Trump supporter. Mitch McConnell decided he's going to turn on Trump and support impeachment. Um, Trump hasn't, Trump's bitching about being knocked off of Twitter. He's always got the White House press room. He can call a press conference anytime he wants. But I don't think we're going to be seeing much of him he's done. White nationalists are trying to, they're trying to pick up a Telegram. All white nationalists are trying to radicalize those tweeting Parler. This is still like, this is still the afternoon. There's Kevin McCarthy gave it to him. It's still the afternoon. Tech giants are like pulling, they're pulling the funding on the seditious representatives. The Tucson music community lost another elder today, Black Man Clay Adams, who was one of the founders of One Heartbeat, which is Tucson's world beat percussion band. And when I shared his page, I said, this is nobody anywhere has ever been able to pull the kinds of riffs out of my axes, like Akshitari, Perez, Tony Marotta, John Halliday, and Bagman Clay. Were able to get the muse pushed through my head when I played with them on second Saturdays. Clay would trade licks with me on recorder, and a lot, all the time, we'd get down. And we both get the little kids boogieing. So to his page, I wrote, "You will always live in the hearts of Tucson's live music community. Rest in power, Brother Clay." And some whale videos. It's just one thing after another. And this is what the these white supremacists that hate me don't understand. I'm not interested in competing with anyone. I hope we all make it. I live my life as kindly as I can. I'm kind to myself and I'm kind to other people. And no, I never allowed my intellect to overrule my instincts and convince me to do things for a living that were ethically improper. I just could never do it. And I'm proud of myself and all of my friends and following who have done the same sort of thing with their own life. It's like, oh man, keep the money. If I gotta do that kind of thing for it, you can keep it. I don't know what else to say. I'm alive. I'm reasonably healthy for my age. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling my age this year. All since it just keeps every time I think I'm getting ahead of things. I'm like getting caught with, oh shit, here comes more crap. And these people are generating as much crap to put at me as possible. And I just gotta, stay in the light. So that's an hour of that stuff. They'll give them something to like laugh at. This is not something I need to concern myself with. Happy day. Thanks for watching. Namaste, motherfuckers.